Hi, this is Robin Curtis. I played Lieutenant Saavik in Star Trek 3 and 4. You're listening to Spoiler Country.
Hello, listeners of Spoiler Country. Today on the show, we have a very special guest, Ms. Robin Curtis. How's it going, Ms. Curtis?
Hello, everyone. Live long and all that good stuff.
I am a huge fan of yours. I absolutely love what you did in Star Trek 3. I've been a fan in 3 and 4 and Next Generation. It is a great honor to speak with you.
Thank you, Jeff. It's my pleasure, truly.
I'm sure you get that often. There's numerous Trekkies who are probably wishing they could talk to you right now.
Well, it has been an incredible experience, to have made the connection with such a large, steadfast fandom. It is all at once overwhelming and thrilling, and one can often feel not worthy.
Well, you definitely earned, I think, the admiration of so many fans. When you decided to become an actor, did you ever think that you'd be part of such a large franchise and fan base like Star Trek?
Oh, good gravy. No, heavens no. And it's funny because I would imagine a lot of my colleagues can remember back to when they decided perhaps to pursue the arts and to be an actor. I backed into it. I was one of those kids in high school that loved all extracurricular activities. I was a really rounded kid. I loved athletics. I loved music. I loved the band. I played an instrument. I enjoyed student government. The school musical choir. So I was kind of, hooked into all these after school activities and these fun hobbies, if you will. And then once I got to college, I had to pick. I was a big fish in a little pond growing up. And at college, you couldn't do sports and the musical program and the theatrical program and so on. So I had to pick. And I chose music. And the acting was really, took second place to the music. That's what really drew me to the creative arts. And Jeff, it wasn't until I was out of college, had a liberal arts degree in theater and communications, and realized I wasn't qualified to do much else, but I sort of had to become an actress, whether I was qualified or not. And a very dear friend of mine that I had done theater with over the summers during college said, "Hey, you want to go to the city and see how we do?" And off I went, and very naively, took on a big world. Honestly, again, somewhat naively, and just hoped for the best. I hoped for the best.
So, well, a question I was curious about when it comes to actors or anyone who does anything in the arts. You said that you had interest in music, you had interest in theater. In college, you studied communications. Did they all intersect in helping you as an actor? Looking back, was there something that helped, that is an aspect of maybe music or preparation for music, that made you also a better actor?
I think the college experience on the whole was a marvelous education. That sound just played, I'm going to say that again. I think that the high school and college experience on the whole prepared me somewhat for real life. And it wasn't necessarily what happened in the classroom, Jeff. Some of those extracurricular activities, sports taught me the concept of team. Theater taught me, again, the concept of team. You're very much working, within a machine where you're relying on other people, whether it's your fellow actor on stage or the prop person just off in the wings, the set designer, whomever. You're all working together as a team to create a final outcome and to tell a good story. I learned a great deal in college in a very select singing group. I went to SUNY Oswego, State University of New York at Oswego, and back in the day, they had a marvelous vocal ensemble called the State Singers, and we would perform with a large band called Solid State. And the gentleman who conceived our arrangements with very current music, made us a very popular fixture on campus, and we would tour. So I got a sense of what it's like to tour as a performer. And I learned that if you didn't speak up, you didn't get the solo.
Mm.
And I learned, the heartbreak of that, of being too shy to put my hand in the air and say, yes, I'd like to be the featured singer on this particular number, and what that means. I'm sure friends of mine could probably speak to similar experiences. You learn in your formative years and in the college experience, you learn about not getting the part that you wanted, but playing the part that you got as best you can and bringing your all to that. And you learn, that there are other people out there, and it's a very competitive field. And, you better be darn dedicated. And I always questioned that, by the way. I always questioned my dedication because I was not, they used to say you have to want it more than anything. And I had to confess I didn't want it more than anything. I don't know whether that was just a lack of confidence or a brilliant stroke of survival skills. Because if you keep something at arm's length and you don't get it, it doesn't hurt as much. I was much more brave, Jeff, in my life with my heart than I was ever able to be brave with my talents, as an actor, let's say. The young lady that invited me to go to the city, I remember Phyllis would go off to a non-equity open audition, and she would, be the 263rd singer that day. She'd sign up and then go back 2 hours later in time, figuring when her number would come up, and she'd sing her 16 bars and come back to the apartment. And I could not imagine anything more soul crushing than having to do something like that. It wasn't that I had an ego about it. I didn't think I was better than the experience. I didn't think I could stay up to that kind of stress and put it out there. And I was in awe of her moxie to be able to do that. What ended up, Jeff, how college paid off for me was that it gave me 4 more years to grow up and kind of collect myself and figure out who Robin was. But I made great friends. And I have to say that it's those friends whom I call angels now that I look back and it was their invitation to an audition in New York City, or their extension of a favor to me. One of the gals I was in college with worked for one of the ad agencies in Manhattan, and I would audition for a commercial, and she'd say, 2 or 3 months into this exercise, she'd say, do you want to come in and see what you're doing on camera? And I said, sure, I'd be tickled pink. She worked at Ted Bates, now that I think of it. And I was able to realize what I was doing on camera was way too big. It was all theatrically, measured to get to the last row in a theater. And I needed to take it all way, way, way down. That camera work is very different. You modulate yourself very differently for the camera than you would on a stage. And that was an interesting experience. But again, back to people I knew in college that I'd done plays with, and we stayed connected. And it was each of us helping the other once we were out in the real world. I think that really made the biggest difference in how my life unfolded and how I actually became a professional actress.
That is awesome. I really like thinking about the paths that happen and those that interact with us that lead us to the direction we need to go in. I think that's an awesome story, and I think maybe a lot of us, if we really were to reflect about it, would find similar things occur in our lives that get us to the point where we end up. And I think that's absolutely fantastic. And I also like the idea that you brought up, the idea that the mindset of those who are doing anything at any high level is similar. Like you said, sports or music or acting. I think that's an incredible statement.
You lost me on that. To go back, Jeff, which statement was it that I made about sports and higher level?
You made a comment about how music and sports is sort of like a similar mindset involved in attempting to be successful in each one of those. Okay. And I thought, once again, that was a very interesting thing. And like the other thing that you mentioned as well is the idea of ego. Is ego, as someone who's pursuing a profession, a dual-edged sword of both being a positive and a negative, or is it 100% necessary to achieve anything?
Well, I just know for me, I had a difficult time asking for anything. When the right relationship came my way, when I was introduced to my first agents in New York City, and they signed me, and then I started to kind of a little traction in the commercial world. I got hired for my first commercial. I was Taft-Hartley to join the union, Screen Actors Guild, to do an Oil of Olay commercial when I was 23 years old, and then another commercial would come and another commercial and so on, and I started to kind of get a little role going. And going back to this idea of ego, if I were to be connected or in front of someone who might be able to help me in some way, I had a difficult time, Jeff, with that, being around people that maybe could, the shakers, the movers and the shakers, because I never wanted anyone to think I was ingratiating myself to them for any other reason other than to know them and to share life for a moment with them. The idea that someone could help me or get me to the next level made me very uncomfortable. And I think the reason for that is because if you put your hand out and you say, "How do you do? Yes, I'm an actress and I'm darn good, and you should bring me into your next project." You have to be able to deliver when you put that kind of energy out there. And I think I have to admit I was a bit of a weenie, and it was easier. It was just easier. It was easier to kind of hide out, hang out, and let what comes to me come. And I certainly, at the end of my 23 years as a professional actress, I looked back and asked myself, gosh, what would it have been like had you been more ambitious? If you had that ambition gene, that I don't seem to have, frankly.
Yes.
I still don't. Even as a real estate agent, I the whole notion of self-promotion makes me cringe. And I don't know what that's about. I mean, because, and nobody would think less of me if I were to advertise myself or to say I do a darn good job as a real estate agent. But the whole thing, Jeff, made me uncomfortable as an actress, and it makes me uncomfortable now. Who knows why we're wired the way we are?
No, I agree with you 100%. So after being in theater for some years, you moved out to LA. So looking back on that, was the move as a young Robin Curtis, was it, do you think, as a move of confidence or foolishness?
Well, probably neither, really. It was very well planned, however. So in New York, I was 24 years old, 25 years old, and I was getting close to the few things of great weight that I was auditioning for. They call them pilots, which is the test episode of a series, and if it goes well, then the network commits to the whole season type of thing. And so my agents in the city, spoke with me about the idea that they thought my career, that I would do much better in Los Angeles, that my type at the time, and this is back when the Karen Allens of the world and Kate Jacksons and Jacqueline Suzannes and the brunettes were popular, and they felt that my type, so to speak, would do well if I just had more opportunities, because it really is a matter of odds. Do you know what I mean? Back in the day, they used to say you had to audition for 30 commercials to get one.
Holy crap.
I know, right? So much of the work, if you will, over the years was about looking for work. When you got the job, you were over the moon, and thanking your lucky stars. So in any case, Jeff, my agents introduced me in New York to a manager from Los Angeles who flew in, somebody they had known. He was a child actor, and now at this point as an adult, he managed talent. And he encouraged me to come out. And so this was like in late 1981. And so in January of 1982, I drove out in a little Dodge Colt with my younger brother to Los Angeles. And prior to my getting there, this gentleman, this manager, his name's Michael Mann, he went around to the studios and flashed this picture of me. It was an interesting picture that I had taken. There was a Lancome ad back in the day where the woman's hair was completely off her face, much like a ballerina would have, like you're almost hairless. Your hair is pulled back severely from your face. So all you see is face. And I decided to have a picture taken like that with a guy in Utica, New York, where I grew up.
Yeah.
Just after leaving college. And my manager took that picture around to the studios and just said, he wouldn't even tell them my name. He just said, she's coming from the city, from New York. And he kind of created this interesting suspense and anticipation, and then I got there and I, in fact, it's worth mentioning because in those first 2 to 3 months, I did probably several dozen meet and greets. You're not meeting someone in relationship to a project, and you're not actually doing an audition. You're just going to meet them. They're perhaps the head of casting at that particular studio, or an independent casting director type of thing. And you're just taking a meeting. It's a general meeting, and they're getting to know you and getting a feel for you. And I met Elsa Bergeron at Paramount during that early time in Los Angeles. And she remembered me. When was it? Like a year later, in 1983. So yeah, it was a full year plus later. She remembered me and had me in to audition for Star Trek III, The Search for Spock. I had a meeting with Elsa Bergeron and Stuart Jensen, and then the very next day I had a meeting with Leonard Nimoy. But I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. So looking back, that journey from New York to LA was very planned, very calculated. And I said to this guy, look, if I don't get any work in the first 6 months, I'm going back to upstate New York. I'm going back to New York City. Because Jeff, I was a diehard New Yorker. And I didn't want to live so far away from my mother and father, who still lived in central New York. And wouldn't you know, in the 5th or 6th month, I got the movie In Love with an Older Woman with John Ritter and Karen Carlson. And I had to stay and was there for 18 years. Yeah.
That is awesome. I mean, that sounds like an enormous amount of pressure put on an actress to show you around, be like, she's coming. They must have felt. I mean, the weight of that is on you as the actress. It's amazing.
Well, I remember a handful of years shortly thereafter, running into a young lady that I knew back in the city, and I told her when she first arrived in LA, I said, "Listen," I said, "There's like this magical time when you're new and they don't know who you are. They don't know if you're somebody or nobody or what." I said, "So they're gonna fuss over you." I said, "Love every minute of it and take full advantage of it, because after you've been here for 6 months, you just fade into the sea of other actors and actresses." You know what I mean? There's no more charge. So there is that time when the casting departments are worried they're going to miss out on the latest it girl, and so there's a little more, you've got a little more cachet, but it doesn't last forever. And then it's back to reality.
So what did your parents think about you moving out to Los Angeles? Did they back your decision, or were they highly concerned?
Oh, my mom and dad were very unusual when it comes to being the parent of somebody pursuing the arts. Always supportive, always rooting me on. In fact, my father bought the Dodge Colt that I drove across country so I'd have a car. They both were college educated. My mother was a teacher, my father an engineer at Griffiths Air Force Base, and they were just tickled pink to think I was pursuing an acting career and actually kind of having a little success at it. I waited tables the whole time I lived in New York City, but probably 1 year in, Jeff, I could have quit my waitressing job, but I didn't. I didn't, because I worked with the best women on the planet, and no actor can take for granted that the work is going to keep coming. You know what I mean? I was grateful to have the waitressing job, but we would all cover for each other. We were a bunch of dancers and actresses, and we covered shifts for each other. If somebody got a show or somebody, got this job or that job that conflicted with their shift. I used to joke when I lived in LA that I still had people covering my shifts back in New York, and I had to go home with my tail between my legs, But no, my mom and dad were just unbelievably supportive. And every phone call I had with them, what do you need, babe? We love you. You go get them, and they were that way with my brothers as well. My mom and dad were our biggest fans. And I remember when they interviewed my mother for the Utica Observer Dispatch, what's it like to have a daughter who's a star? And she said, oh, all my children are stars.
That's great.
Yeah.
They sound like terrific parents.
Oh, they were extraordinary, truly extraordinary. Really, really, really. I could show you stuff. It's interesting. The fans have been so supportive of me over the years. You go to conventions and you want to bring something different. I've always tried to do that rather than just sort of dial in the same answers to the same questions and stuff. And I have shared some of my mother's and father's letters to me with the fans, because they were pretty prolific writers with regard to letters, and they would write poems for special occasions and all that kind of stuff. And the fans have really loved it. They've been so tender and caring about, the way, just the relationships I had with my parents, because it was unusual. It was unusual, the amount of love and affection and joy and sense of humor that they had. Real joie de vivre.
Do you think you could have accomplished what you have accomplished if you did not have their support?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. In fact, until I got out in the world, honestly, I was again, so naive. I thought everybody had a mom and dad like that. And I didn't know until I, was in college and then further out into the world, meeting people who had very, uneven relationships with their moms and dads, or divorced parents, or no relationship at all. It would break my heart. It would break my heart. And I think, I feel enormously blessed that the greatest dysfunction in my life was too much love. If there is such a thing. My mother, Jeff, my mother would sing to me at night. And that's why I've written a piece about my life.
Yeah.
And it's called A Good Girl. And because my mother would sing to me when I was little, everyone loves Robin. Robin is a good girl. Daddy loves his Robin girl. Mommy loves her Robin. Everyone loves Robin. That's what she would sing to me at night. And then my father would come in and he'd say, then now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. We'd do a little prayer, and then he would put a kiss in my palm, and he'd fold my fingers over his kiss. And then I would put a kiss in his big hand and fold his fingers over his palm, and he'd hold his hand up, like, I've got it, as he went out my bedroom door. The last thing I'd see is his fist going behind the door and his twinkly eyes looking at me. And, just really good stuff.
That sounds like definitely a blessed childhood and a blessed life, that to have parents like that.
Totally. And I have two spectacular brothers, and they married like just the most outstanding women who have been my best friends their whole lives. And they each had two kids, and I adore them. And very, 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 very blessed to have a super family. My mom and dad gave us that, by the way. I talked to friends who might not have a good relationship with their sibling. And it's like, it seems like maybe mom and dad got in the mix, and a little too much competition or whatever. I don't know how they, it doesn't take much to do that with kids, but our mom and dad, said the greatest gift you can give us is to love each other. and we do.
That's fantastic. Well, a little after moving to Los Angeles, you actually got a role on a show that I remember watching as a little child, and it was very important, a Knight Rider. So what was it like to be on Knight Rider?
Oh, it was a gas. Good gravy. That car, the car was a pisser. And David Hasselhoff is a gentleman and, very easygoing, generous actor. And I remember the supporting cast was fun. Who did I work with on that episode? A really wonderful character actor. And I'm going blank on his name. I should have looked him up. He played my husband. Back in the day when they would have a woman and a man of just completely disparate ages,
Yes.
or disparate ages. I always say that. I'm 24 and he's 49, but we're husband and wife.
Right.
And, yeah. No, it was good stuff, and kind of tangential to science fiction. Later on when I connected with the science fiction fans, some of them also like the fun of Knight Rider. So a little overlap there.
So, I mean, you've worked with David Hasselhoff, and also you've worked with William Shatner, two big egos from the 1980s. Were they? I mean, was Hasselhoff? I'm trying to think of the best way to ask the question, because, looking back in recent history, Hasselhoff has had some rough media. Was he back in the day? Was he considered? I mean, was he a tough guy to work with? Was it easy to work with?
Jeff, I don't have a memory of anything negative whatsoever about him. I have rarely had, if ever, a negative experience working in Hollywood. And I know they happen, but I had a very good run and didn't really come across anything like that. So no, I think that may have been too early in David's career for him to have any kind of an attitude. When I came across his path, he was perfectly lovely and a gentleman. And I don't remember him being particularly, difficult to get along with.
Now,
I just don't remember anything like that.
Now, I don't recall which season of Knight Rider you appeared in. Was Knight Rider already a well-known show when you appeared?
Oh, you're asking me? Now I've got to Google it. I don't know. I honestly wouldn't remember. I can't help you.
I mean, had you heard of Knight Rider prior to getting the role?
Yes. Yeah, it wasn't new. But I'll be honest, doggone it. So the first episode starred in 1982. And I probably didn't do it too far beyond that time. 1982. Hold on. I used to see Patricia McPherson at auditions after that. Okay. So there I am as one of the cast members. Is it going to tell me when I was on the show, though? No. Doggone it. Maybe. Let me look. Knight Rider. Oh, is it going to give me the exact episode? Probably not. Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I'm in an endless loop.
No worries.
It's taking me back to Knight Rider when it first came on. Sorry, kiddo.
Oh, it's absolutely no worries. I was just curious if by the time you were on set, was it already kind of like a known entity? And what was it like to be one that people were familiar with?
Well, you want to know something, dadgummit? You won't believe this, I have in front of me my 1983 calendar.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I dug it out. I dug out my paychecks from 1983 and 1984 and my 1983 and 84 calendar because I did a couple of interviews recently that were Star Trek related. And I wanted to refresh my memory. And I couldn't believe that I knew I still had them, but I was able to put my fingers on them so fast. I still have every paycheck I ever earned. Every paycheck I have ever earned is in my basement since 1978. Holy crap. Right? And I could hear.
I sure hope you were.
Wait a minute. It was on the air May 6th of 1983. So I had to have done it several weeks earlier. Do you know what I mean? Like normally there would be like a several week lag between shooting and airing. So it was sometime in early spring of 1983. Yeah. Oh my God, I just found it. I worked on the show March 8th of 1983. So he was on the air for a full, like a full season. September 26, 1982 is when it first went on. And I worked in March of 83, just a few months later.
Yeah.
So yes, he was already off and running.
So that must have been a lot of exposure for you when it had to be a hell of a thing to be on a show that had already been a hit or at that point.
Oh, well, yes. No. It was a wonderful thing. Oh my goodness. Back at the time, early on, Jeff, you're pinching yourself. You're so, you just, even to the end, I was always in disbelief when I got a job, grateful, joyful, disbelief. But it's interesting when you look back, because you're making this point about, oh, wow, I scored a hit TV show in the first season. You look back and you say, okay, did I do the work I wanted to do? Did I feel like someone tapped into my abilities really and got them up and out of me? And I don't think so. I don't think so. You can look back over the course of a career and be so grateful in every part of you that somebody picked you to be on MacGyver, or somebody picked you to do a little, show that never went anywhere, called Johnny Bago, whatever it was. You were just so happy to work, to pay your bills. The thrill of it never, ever went away. However, when I retired and it was over and I looked in the rearview mirror, I told you earlier, I asked myself, geez, I wonder, you did pretty well for somebody who never knocked on a door where she wasn't invited or expected. And you never asked anybody for anything. Your agents loved you because I was not a pain in the ass like most actors, and and so I asked myself, like God, what would have happened had you been more aggressive? Had you asked for more? Had you put your hand out? Had you spoken to the most important party the one or two times you ever got into an A-list party and introduced yourself and spoke up, because in the end, I think an actor has to find their own way too. In other words, you can work, but it doesn't mean that you're going to feel fulfilled or gratified. And I think that's why some actors do stage, or why some actors write pieces for themselves, or they participate in other ways outside the lane of television work or film work, because yeah, you got the part, but was it the part you would give an organ to play necessarily? Maybe not. You know what I mean? Did Knight Rider change my life forever? No, it did not. Now that said, did it lead to was it one of the credits that maybe gave Leonard Nimoy, the confidence to say she could do it? She's a professional. I don't know. Maybe. Did Star Trek change my life? Yes. Big time. But do I look back and say, oh, that's the best and most favorite role I ever played? Oh my goodness, not on your life. Not on your life. I was so perplexed and confused most of the time. Because you're trained to effuse, you're trained to emote, to play yourself like you have the notes on a piano are your it's your emotional life. And I felt so restricted and confined and constipated, really. I've said in the past, and I did feel that way. I thought I was going to get a pink slip. The first couple of weeks I was on set, I said, somebody's going to look at these dailies and say, she's out of here. She's not quite getting that wry thing that Vulcans do. Whatever. But I trusted Leonard Nimoy. He was an utter gentleman. and class all the way. And I remember shaking his hand the first day of, and I said, "You seem to think I know what I'm doing, Mr. Nimoy, but I do not. So please, please, please help me." And he said, "Robin, I'll take you every step of the way. I will not put you out on, the end of a limb and leave you there." And I said, "Okay, good, great. I want it. I need it." Most actors would consider a line reading an insult, but he and I would go and we'd sit on the edge of a soundstage, on a platform, and he'd say, "Okay." He'd say, "Let me hear it. Let me hear it." And I'd say the lines, and maybe he might give me a line reading, and I'd say, "Okay." And I'd repeat it back to him like he just did. And he'd say, "Okay, you got it." And I'm like, "Okay, good." And that's how we did it. We did it together. You know what I mean? Anyway.
That's amazing. I mean, you're taking direction on how to play a Vulcan from basically the most famous Vulcan of all time.
Exactly. No, exactly. I was in the best hands imaginable. And I was, cool enough to recognize too, this was this man's moment, stepping out from in front of the camera to behind the camera. And I could appreciate, it's like, I don't want to be Mr. Nimoy's problem when he's trying to do this thing. He's trying to balance all these people and the dynamics on the set and keep Bill, happy, and keep the supporting cast happy, all of his friends who are so good to me, and Christopher Lloyd and me and Merritt Buttrick. And so I thought he did a magnificent job of keeping all those plates in the air, and having to overcome any preconceived notion about whether he would succeed or not, and get the job done. And I thought he was brilliant. And the whole time he took care of me too, so.
Do you think like he identified with you? As you said, this is his first time as a director. This is an early moment of you in a film. Do you think he kind of felt a connection because you're both kind of on uncharted waters for yourselves?
Oh, you're the first person to make that observation in all these years.
Oh,
and
thank you.
And it kind of hit me on the heart muscle, frankly. Well, I'll add, I'm going to get a little emotional. I'll add one more layer to that. He was the same age as my father.
Oh.
And my father was diagnosed with cancer. And he knew it. He knew about it. And he was so kind. And honestly, Star Trek was like this miracle. This miracle thing that happened in my family that could distract us for 5 minutes from this agonizing pain we were all in. It was like such a gift. I can't say it enough. It gave us all something to look forward to. It was so different and out there and like a beacon of light from the heavens, honestly. And such a gift to be able to reassure my father when he wasn't, he really didn't know if he was going to make it or not, that I would be okay in the world. And he did live long enough to see the movie. He died at the age of 54 in 1984 in November. And then Star Trek was really the best thing that could have happened right then. The best thing that could have happened, Jeff. And Leonard Nimoy knew that. He knew that at the time. And he was lovely about it.
He knew what was happening with your father at that while he was directing you?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Was
and he reminded me of my dad. He's tall, dark, good-looking man. He Leonard Nimoy has charisma, and he's warm. And my father was the same way, a tall, elegant man, and so I just had a lot of admiration for him.
Would you say that he was knowingly acting as surrogate father while you were on set because he knew what was happening?
No, I wouldn't. I think that would be mischaracterizing it a little bit. He wasn't being fatherly, but he was being respectful and protective and kind. Do you know what I mean? Because I was a little thin-skinned, and it may have been more me than him. In other words, he had bigger fish to fry, you know. But my experience from my point of view, I feel so badly because, of course, people want to know, what happened on the set. Was there anything funny? Little anecdotes. And I really was. I was very, what's the word? I was very focused and quiet. I didn't speak to anybody until they spoke to me because that just was not my approach. I was very nervous about fulfilling, my commitment and giving the character integrity and doing my job. I really was focused on doing my job. And so like even Merritt Buttrick would like want to goof around. He was so much more comfortable in his skin and in his character, and he knew these people and stuff. And he would try to pull me in, and it's like, no, I can't dance. I can't play with you on the set yet because I'm not that comfortable yet.
Yeah,
I'm not that confident and comfortable with my situation. So I was very serious. And you don't think of me. I mean, you've hung out with me now for what, almost an hour.
Yes.
You can tell I'm not a serious person. I'm very playful and oh my goodness. But for me, I was very serious on that set. And then I finally let my hair down a little bit toward the end, when I was getting to realize I survived.
So
I gotta get a tissue, Jeff. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, no worries.
Go ahead, honey. I'm right here.
So because once again, Leonard Nimoy, after being Spock, understands Vulcans in a way that many other actors don't. Because you're playing a Vulcan as well. What kind of tips did he give you on how to best portray a character, as you said, like Saavik, who is, I imagine, because he's a Vulcan and not openly emotional, has to be all about subtext. What did Nimoy tell you as tips on how to best be this alien?
I wish that I had kept better notes, doggone it. So, and even Walter Koenig told me, keep a diary. And I didn't believe him. I didn't buy that, that was necessary. And I wish I had. But the things that I remember are these. He literally said, take the script, take your lines, look into a mirror, and try to speak your lines without any movement in your face. And that Jeff seems like a very sort of, a very unemotional direction. It's just very technical, right? But I think he was trying to get me to be aware of the fact that I think sometimes our faces, move and we're not aware of it. He wanted me to be aware of and conscious of the way my face might convey the meaning of something, and that I needed to edit that out. There was that. And then he said, Vulcans have 1,000 years of wisdom behind the eyes. He said that to me in the audition when I read in his office for him. And of course that's a tall order.
Right. How do you play 1,000 years of wisdom?
but I got it. I got the bigger, concept there and did my best to bring that as well. That sort of self-containment and that presence. He was a lovely director in that he had a way of disarming me. The last scene of the film when Spock's Katra has been restored from McCoy back to him with the Faltorpan ritual, and now Spock is proceeding out of the sort of temple, and he turns back and he steps back to sort of walk down the line of his comrades. It's me and it's Nichelle and it's Jimmy and so on until he gets to Kirk. Well, before we shot that scene, Leonard Nimoy stepped up to me, and he stepped, rather than sort of sitting on the edge of a platform right side by side with me. He now is standing in my space, and he whispers in my ear, like he puts his face past mine to come right to my ear in a sort of a very personal way. And he said, how would you feel how would you feel, Robin, if you were on a New York City street and you're, walking down the boulevard and coming towards you is somebody that you loved, somebody that you were intimate with, and they're walking towards you and you're about to meet them again. And I was like, oh my God, like a lot of things happened at once in that few seconds, wow, what a powerful question. I'm a little embarrassed to I want to articulate my response to you, but I'm a little embarrassed to sort of figure out what words to use. And I pulled my face away from his and I looked up at him, almost like I'm here, I'm present, I'm listening to you. I got it. I got the question. And I'm so in this moment with you. And then I looked down and then I looked back up thinking, I think I was going to find the words. And before I could speak, he said, that's it. That's what I want. That's what I want. And it was like, oh, you smart man. You just got it out of me, got me out of my own way, so to speak. So anyway.
That's very cool.
Yeah,
and,
right.
Well, the other thing I always wondered about, because obviously Saavik was previously played by Christy Alley in Wrath of Khan. And obviously you're playing the same character. Was there a discussion of either trying to mimic what was done, or did Leonard Nimoy want you to make the character your own?
Oh, so I deliberately chose not to watch the previous movie because I am very impressionable, and I was really worried that I would totally lock on to her whatever and not be able to jump tracks if I got to the set and Leonard Nimoy was doing something different. So in a way, I just kind of covered my ears and eyes and showed up for the first day of work. And what happened was, and I think this was a very wise tack, Harv Bennett, the producer, and Leonard Nimoy chose the approach. It's like Saavik was just created. Like it was never played before. I mean, it's not like the story didn't exist and that we didn't the setup, but just that I wasn't made to feel as though that anybody else ever existed, or that I was filling someone else's shoes, so to speak, or I was number two, or whatever that is. And honestly, that has nothing to do with her portrayal so much as it has to do with their shrewd understanding of human, foibles, that it was better to come with a fresh approach. And especially if Leonard was going to take the character maybe in a slightly different direction, not dramatically different, but just, ever so slightly, think of it as a volume, from 7 to 8.
Right.
Different. And fans would come up to me and tell me, oh, well, in 2, Saavik had more emotion, displayed more human qualities. And I appreciate that. I totally appreciate that, because it's such a collaboration between the director and the actress. It just so happens in my case, Mr. Nimoy didn't feel there should be any emotion at all, at least beyond which he if there was, he controlled it. He controlled it. The David is dead line, tortured me from day one. I knew, that scene's coming. That scene's coming. Whether I like it or not, I'm going to have to play that scene. And he would not let me put any emotion on it at all. And everything about it felt wrong to me as a human being. But I had to get out of my way and just follow his direction. Well, and similarly, the scene with the young Spock in a cave, and the two of us coming to work that day, wondering, okay, all right, what's Vulcan foreplay? What is Vulcan foreplay? What is Mr. Nimoy going to come up with for us today? And then when he took us aside and showed us that it was ever so simple, this simple finger play, it's like, okay. And Stephen and I practiced that in such a way that, we both gave each other the gift of, yeah, this is intimate. This is really intimate. This is just like the other things we think of as intimacy, but we're gonna give this moment that tenor, that flavor. And God bless him, he's such a sensitive actor. So the two of us felt like we got there with that. But that's what it's like playing aliens. You have to be Gumby, and you have to let the director kind of guide you ever so slightly one way or another.
I kind of found it interesting. There's a scene where, as Saavik, you're working with Spock as a much younger child. And I found Saavik to be very maternal in that moment. And I know you said, and I felt there was emotion play under the surface. Was that, like, were you actually thinking of Saavik at that moment as being almost motherly towards Spock?
Oh, absolutely. Motherly might be slightly overstating it, because then, not too much time later, it's not motherly anymore.
Right.
Although I suppose you could think of that as a nurturing thing between Vulcans. But yeah, in that moment, it's about protecting him and feeling that sense of protection. And Leonard also choreographed that moment with the noses.
Yeah.
Where he reaches up and touches my nose and then touches his own nose, which is very sweet. So that's all Leonard Nimoy, giving it that little extra specialness,
And I think it was also great when you appear in Star Trek 4. And you have a great scene with William Shatner early in the film. But did you think that Saavik deserved a larger scene with Spock, considering what those two characters had gone through in the previous movie?
Well, you're so cute to say that. I don't know if the correct word is deserve. They negotiated with me a 4-film contract. And I think that was so they wouldn't have to worry about what happened with Kirstie Alley between 2 and 3.
Yeah.
Not having worked it out and so on. So that led me to think, well, there's more in store. I mean, I would never presume such a thing, but because they had done it that way, and because the fans were all in on the idea that Saavik was pregnant and there was going to be a storyline along those lines in the future and so on, they really groomed me to think I was meant for more storytelling. But then the option to do Star Trek 4 ran out, Paramount's option with me as an independent contractor, if you will. And the people at Star Trek were telling my manager, she's not in the script. So it looked as though there wouldn't be any involvement at all. And then after the option expired, they called and said, well, as a matter of fact, she is in the beginning of the film and we only want to pay her X. And I mean, at that point, it's like, well, hell's bells. Of course I want to be in the movie. Yeah. And I want to see the character, land somewhere at least, or get a period. and then they move on, So I will say that at the beginning, in fact, I have a telegram from Harv Bennett. I have several telegrams from Harv Bennett. He was a very classy guy. He sent me a telegram that says, this is for Star Trek 4. Oh, doggone it. Where the dickens is it? Hold on. What? Wait a second. I'm freaking out. Oh, here it is. I finally found it. Okay. From Harv Bennett on March 25th, 1986. I, too, am delighted you are with us. Have a wonderful shoot and bring a Vulcan obstetrician along just in case. Love, Harv.
That's cool.
Pretty cool, huh?
Very cool.
So there was a line about that, and it was cut.
Oh.
Something about Saavik with child. I don't remember exactly what it was, Jeff. I apologize. So they kind of, just left it where it was.
And I must admit, like watching Star Trek 4, and you realize in the previous movie, I mean, Saavik, in many ways, kind of re-raised Spock from a child to an adult. You really figured something would have to have been acknowledged in the fourth movie based on how important Saavik became to the respawn Spock, as it were. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I really just followed the fans' instincts, and for almost 2 years of conventions, and being introduced to that whole experience and world, which was just phenomenal. I felt like they were telling me how this is what's going to happen. You're going to be, this younger storyline. They're trying to bring more stuff in, blah, blah, blah. Saavik with Spock. And I'm like, okay, yay, woohoo! I'm so excited. And the beautiful thing about art is that it can go any one of a number of directions. And I never, once I got over the initial sting, right? I thought Star Trek IV was such a wonderful movie, and I loved the upbeat feel to the story. I loved the singular message of preserving life and the whales. I liked the camaraderie between the characters and the humor, lots of humor. Catherine Hicks was wonderful. I just really enjoyed the overall film itself. Just taking it on its own, away from a trilogy. I thought it was a home run. And that they had returned to the magical recipe that is Star Trek.
Yeah, I must say,
storytelling.
I really did love Star Trek 4. Like I said, I was one who definitely wanted to see more Saavik in it. But you also played Saavik, if I read correctly, in an audio drama called Starship Excelsior as Commander Saavik. Is that correct?
Yes. Oh gosh, these really nice guys. James Haney reached out to me, or Heaney, and asked me if I would participate in it. And I said, sure. Oh, it was so much fun. It was so much fun. I love voiceover work. You don't have to be cute to do voiceover work. And I knew that Walter had already participated, and it was, it was fun to kind of return to the drawing board and feel a little more confident, all these years later, about Saavik and about my ability to play her. And it was a very enjoyable experience, very enjoyable. Again, there's nothing like being at a microphone. I did do a little voiceover work in my career, and I did a lot of commercials, but there's nothing like a microphone and a sound booth. And I had a knack, and I really wished I could have done this more often. I had a knack. They would say, in a 60-second spot, you have to shave off 1 second. And I'm like, okay, let me do it again. And I would, I had a very good, because I think because of my musical background, I had a very good sense of rhythm and speech pattern and nailing it, and at least in terms of timing, because sometimes you're re-recording your own lines in a scene where the sound was bad. So you need to sync with your lips. You need to sync with the visual to get it right. So sometimes in episodic work, Jeff, you appreciate maybe a plane went overhead, or there was a dog barking, or something went wrong with the sound. So then it has to be recreated in the studio, something you did 2 weeks ago. And that was always fun to try to recreate your performance audio, with just your, you know what I mean? Yeah.
And
anyway,
as playing someone who, I mean, obviously you're playing a Saavik who's now a commander and everything. Did the character, how did you play the character thinking about where she was now? Given that, like I said, obviously you're playing Commander Saavik at that point. Did you think that maybe, what did you add to how you wanted to handle her?
You're giving me way too much credit. Oh, good gravy. No, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
One can kind of get caught up in those subtle facts, perhaps. But no, honestly, to me, it's all just, let's pretend that you're Saavik, and whether I'm commander or lieutenant or whatever the hell it is, honestly, it wouldn't matter to me, because all I need to know is what's happening in the scene. What point am I getting across? I don't know that I would play it different having that discernment and information in my head. So I apologize. I've
worries.
let you down on that one.
No, you do
badly.
okay.
No, just not that sophisticated in the brain.
No, you do okay. Well, you also get to play. You also played the character. I'm going to probably pronounce the name wrong. DePaul. Am I pronouncing it anywhere close to being correct? DePaul in Star Trek: The Next Generation in episode Gambits Parts 1 and 2, and where you're playing a Vulcan, but a Vulcan who's playing a Romulan who's really a Vulcan. So how did you make sure that DePaul was different than Saavik in performing it?
Oh, well, I had a whole lot more fun doing The Next Generation because again, I was a little more relaxed. And I liked the sort of cat and mouse interplay between her character and Picard. And Patrick, all you have to do in a scene with Patrick is just not screw it up too badly because he's so grounding. He's the kind of actor that the director says action, they say their first line, and they're so natural in their delivery and so in their skin that you're undone. You're like, oh, you just said your line. Oh my God. Because they mesmerize you in that moment and you can't even think. You're like, yes, I forgot. I'm an actor, I'm in Hollywood, and I'm actually on a job and I have to say my line now. That's how disarming he is, Patrick Stewart. So for me, the challenge was to just hold my own. I wanted my energy to be equal to his and also challenging to him. And I remember thinking I was like, I felt like a hawk or something. My for some reason, the way to get there for me was to sort of think in terms of personifying a hawk, and so I'm like looking like a bird looks, their body is still, but they're sort of operating from the neck up and turning their head and so on, and very aware of what's happening around them. And if you watch it, you'll see that's kind of what I was doing. I think that they wanted a kind of a sense of, not seduction, that's too strong a word, but a little sexual tension between them, which is not easy to do when you look like what they made me look like. You know what I'm saying? Very severe wig and oh my God, it's like I don't feel the least bit sexy, but I tried in body language again, in positioning myself around him, moving about him. He was stationary and I was always moving around him to sort of imply like a little bit of a male-female tension between us. It had nothing to do with being a Vulcan. Did you know I played the whole first part of the show, the first half, not knowing what I was?
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
It's not revealed till the second episode. And I remember saying to one of the producers, can I see the second script? Because it's really clear. I'm kind of, there's subterfuge and I don't know what's going on. I don't know I don't seem to be who I say I am. Yeah, well, we don't have it yet. So you just have to keep going. So in some respects, I was just kind of acting blindly. And at that point, honestly, you just put your hands into you put yourself into the hands of the director and trust that it's going to make sense, that they're directing you in a way that hasn't, maintains the integrity of the story.
If you had known, were there choices? Would you have made different choices on how you performed the character, knowing that it is what turns out to be a Vulcan instead of a Romulan?
No, I don't think so. Because she was a Vulcan masquerading as a Romulan. At least that's what she claims. So all that it mattered was that I be Romulan-esque.
Gotcha. So
until the reveal. So yeah.
So one of the other projects that you've done, as you kind of referred to it earlier, you were in a one-person play called A Good Girl, The Sexual Odyssey of a 64-year-old Woman. Now, you mentioned a few times of being a shy person. What made you want to do a one-person show like that, which I would feel would be, it seems like a very extroverted type of show. And so how did you make that decision?
Well, so going back to my growing up years, we lived in a small house, one bathroom, three men, two girls. And so there was a very natural, there was a very natural interaction between all of us with regard to our personal bodies. Like, and that didn't come out right. So it makes it sound like I'm living on a nudist colony or a commune or something. Not at all. Not at all. I'm just saying that the way I was raised, there were no hangups. There was no neuroses about bodies and their natural functions and all that good stuff. And lots of physical affection. Like at some point I figured out my mother and father, had a physical relationship once I understood what that was, kind of a thing. And it was so nice to know, that there was passion for them. And so I grew up with some, I didn't even understand embarrassment. I mean, I understood embarrassment maybe if I got a bad grade, but not about my person. The body was normal and natural and wonderful and all good. And I just didn't have any hangups. And so when I was coming of age and songs like, if you can't be with the one you love the one you're with. And the women's movement was in full tilt. And Cosmopolitan, was on the newsstands, and women were claiming their orgasms, and girls could ask a boy out if they wanted to. It might be awkward. It might be new, but it was okay. It was socially acceptable. Abortion became legal in 1973. Birth control was prevalent. And so with all of these freedoms, and because I grew up in such a sort of a natural, wholesome household where action of yourself physically was thought of as good, I kind of grew up very much in my skin, and I liked boys and figured out, the mechanics of all of that fairly young. And as I got older and I went off to college, and then I went out in the world, I had no problem talking about my experiences very, very, candidly and plainly and honestly. And people started to say, my friends would say, you got to write that down. You really got to write that down. I'd be like, whoa, whatever. Write it down, whatever. It's just my life, whatever. Who wants to know about my stuff, right? And my romantic life was always interesting and thrilling and soul crushing and all the things romantic lives can be. And I had a way of expressing it, Jeff, or sharing it that was very real and honest. And it got so friends would say, what's up now? Even in the audition rooms out in LA, I can remember, girlfriends, because we all became friends. Actresses become friends of each other. And I was always tickled pink when one of them got the job. And they were happy for me when I got the job. And the real professionals felt that way. They really did feel that way. We were supportive of each other. In those audition rooms, I met some of the best women on the planet, those waiting rooms, right? And anyway, I finally started writing it down. And it wasn't until I moved to Cincinnati, and I was 43 years old, and I married my younger brother's best friend, somebody from my childhood. And I moved to Cincinnati, and I was a bit of a fish out of water, and I was getting to know the town and a new life. And I connected with one of the best women on the planet, who then connected me to another fabulous woman. And I got involved with a women's writing group. And this group encouraged me to write my piece, my show. What happened was I was writing it chronologically, Jeff, and I stopped as soon as I turned 18, because I met someone when I turned 18 that changed my life forever. And I couldn't articulate it. I couldn't write about it objectively. I couldn't even find the words. Like it was too big. It was too much to unwrap and unfold to put on the paper. So the women in the writing group in Cincinnati said, so jump around. Why do you have to write in a linear fashion, in a chronological fashion? Just move on to another subject, move on to another place. And I'm like, wow, you just gave me permission to tap into my life now, because I'd stopped when I was 18. And suddenly I'm writing about my marriages, and I'm writing about all of it. Oral sex, STDs, abortion, marital sex. As I said, there's so many chapters there. Just there's endlessly interesting topics. Masturbation, and I just decided to okay, I'm gonna infertility. I'm gonna write by topic versus chronologically, and it just all came together. And after 2 or 3 years with these women, I was leaving Cincinnati, and it was the end of our last class together. And they said, "We want you to perform it for us." And so I did it. I did it for a sort of a private group of women, and it was a big hit. And then I moved to upstate New York, and I eventually connected with somebody at the college I attended, and he directed it. And I did it in front of a paid audience up in Oswego, which was super. And I was worried that the kids would think, who wants to listen to this old bag talk about her sex life, right?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. The young ladies ran up to the stage afterward. Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. Oh my God, that's my life too, blah, 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 blah. It was so wonderful. Because the message in the end, and this is, just a little teaser. What I would want to say to young women is, don't give it all away. Keep some for yourself. Because it's easy for a young lady to, Jeff, if you figure out that, being with a boy a certain way makes him all interested in you and a little stupid and almost drunk with you, it's an easy note to play. But it's important to realize you need to connect. You need to connect in other ways. That's the easy way to go to connect, with a boy. Better to learn, is he funny? Is he a good guy? Does he like his mother and father? Is he to his siblings? Does he work hard? Does he have a good work ethic? Does he tell the truth? Does he have values? Is he smart? It's all that stuff that matters. But if when you're young and you're insecure, it's just easy to play. It's easy to play the physical lane, to take that lane and explore that with somebody and then figure out if they're compatible with you. And that's just an ass backwards way to go about it. So that's it pretty much in a nutshell. I'm sorry I went on and on about it.
No worries. So as you were writing it, were you learning things about yourself that you didn't realize were there until you started really thinking about it in these terms as a writer?
Yes. Yes, I was. It's always, I hope I'm learning till the day I die. I feel so lucky, Jeff, as I said, most of what's been written on my DNA isn't too hard to unpack. It really isn't, because there just was so much goodness there. But even somebody like me, I have, my life journey is no different than someone else's. I have to figure out, what mistakes I've made and who do I want to be? What are the best parts of me and what are the parts that need work? And I did. I learned better how to relate to the opposite sex. I think better, more truthfully, more authentically for myself. Yeah, I have more confidence now in all the other parts of me that I don't have to play. I don't have to, be sexy to attract another human being. And it may be a part of me. It's certainly a part of me, and it's hardly ever shut off. But I'm not the same woman I was when I was 18. That's for darn sure. In terms of how I approach the opposite sex. Yeah.
Were you surprised? Did any aspect of what you were looking at and reflecting upon surprise you about yourself? Like, did you think to yourself, I hadn't really thought of myself in this way until I really kind of, until I started writing things, reflecting upon it, and I go, and you think to yourself, I'm surprised that I may be more like this than I thought I was, or maybe I more in these kind of areas than I ever considered about myself before?
Yes, no. I think the big revelation was that I thought I was in control.
Mm.
I thought I was. I want to find the right word here. I thought my actions would bring about a certain reaction, and that I knew what I was doing. And all these years later, the light bulb went off that the other person knew exactly what they were doing, and that perhaps I was the one that was being manipulated.
Oh, wow.
Right. And by the way, I didn't mean to imply that I would ever try to manipulate anyone. I'm simply saying that, and I made this clear a moment ago, that when it comes to interrelationships with the opposite sex, it's easy to physicalize it.
Mm.
That's an easy thing to do. The more difficult thing to do is to actually get to know that person and to let the chemical attraction sort of simmer, and then allow the things you've come to learn about one another have an impact on the chemistry and the physical. And I'm just saying that I pushed the physical first because that's where I felt the most confident. And it's a powerful elixir to a young lady, to make a boy goofy in the head, over you. And all it is really, not to be too tacky, but all it is lust. Do you know what I mean? And so the revelation for me was that there may have been a couple of occasions, even later on in my 20s and 30s, when I thought I was expressing myself in a very sort of feminist, independent way toward the opposite sex. And really, maybe I was, I wasn't really in charge. They were, they had an agenda. They got what they wanted. And, and perhaps I had been used in a way I didn't realize. I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't mean to be obtuse about this. You know what I'm saying? It's enough what I've said to ponder. Most people can relate to exactly what I'm saying.
Do you find yourself wanting to add to your play or your performance as time goes on? Do you think, maybe I should add this story, and as you're thinking back, are you remembering things that maybe that you almost forgot that you had remembered?
I have to tell you, you're one of the best interviewers ever.
Oh, thank you so much.
So you're so sweet, because so the show ended, right? And it ended about 15 years ago, when I met somebody who has been in my life ever since. And now we're no longer a couple. And now the challenge is, Jeff, do I write about that? Do I add that to the show? Or is that another show? Is it a Good Girl Part 2? Because it's so dense and it's so thick, and it's a lot to unravel, frankly. And it would help me. It would, and I don't think I'm exposing anybody here too terribly much. It's my life, damn it. I can talk about it if I want to. There was infidelity. And that was something that was horrible to go through, really horrible. And I never imagined I would be like a victim of that, and then it happens to you, and you just, you're in this like free fall of shame and embarrassment and anger and just unbelievable pain, unbelievable hurt. Esther Perel, who does a TED talk on infidelity, said it's death by 1,000 cuts. And she's right. And, and you rethink everything, and it's just something that's not, you don't snap back from it. fast. It's a recovery that takes time. And I thank God I'm over it. And I thank God that the person that I was involved with, I give him a lot of chops for helping me get over it. You know what I'm saying? Like he, even though he was the culprit, he was also a part of the healing and the tonic. And that meant a lot to me. That's one of the things in life, not to get too heady on this stuff, but I've been saying for decades that Americans, our culture is so end phobic. We don't like to go there with death. And I'm very proud of the fact that I've had the endings of relationships in 3 marriages and this one most recently. And Jeff, I stayed in it with counseling or therapy until both partners were expressed and everything was said that needed to be said, and everybody got what they needed and could move on. I never left a relationship for another man or some other crutch. I earned my way out. I walked out, on my own 2 feet with my own steam. And I'm proud of that. I really am proud of that. And I think people, we need to pay more attention to the endings, because sometimes the way you end something with someone can leave them reeling for years. Years. I'm now talking to people, and I'm out dating again. And I meet people who say, 4 years later, they still think about that person. They wonder about that person, or they don't even know why it ended. And I'm like, how could you even participate in something and you don't know how or why it ended? Like that's partly on you, You've got to just get it. I mean, like, good gravy. What are you doing with your life if you're that removed from it, So the good news is I've had so many loves, but I don't think of any of it as baggage, because I worked it through at the time. You know what I mean? They live in me, but they live in me in a friendly, beautiful way. They don't live in me like I'm dragging them around,
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you're, because I found it something interesting that you're saying, especially using words like embarrassment. Is it something that gets personalized, that it's on you, or are you able to keep it as them as the ones who did the inappropriate, infidelity, or does it automatically become something that feels personalized to you?
Oh, I think it's both. The person who's cheated on feels like, I thought, like, it's embarrassing because you think, well, people will assume I wasn't loving enough, or I wasn't tender enough, or I wasn't, giving them enough love and physical attention and sex and all that good stuff. And it's like, it's nothing like that. It's not, I don't think that's where it comes from necessarily. You can't make that assumption that the partner, the aggrieved partner, was somehow pushed them into it. I will take ownership of the fact that we were struggling, right? And I, as much as I implored and begged and pleaded for him to talk to me and to explain to me what was going on, and I'm here and I'm ready to listen whenever, and I'm willing to do whatever it is to make things work. There came a time maybe when I should have said, clearly you're not willing to be in this with me. But I kept thinking it was a chapter. It was a change of, like a midlife crisis or something. And that it would, that he would be back. It's like, you'll be back. And we had so many other things going together, raising his sons and being in business together, that I hated to throw in the towel, but if I'm honest, I should have thrown in the towel. I should have just, I should have said, you're not sustaining this relationship with me. I'm in it. I'm waiting. I'm here with my hand out for crumbs.
Yeah.
I'm ready to do the work and show up and, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I couldn't extricate myself, and, in fairness, he couldn't tell me what was going on.
Mm.
And once he did, it made us close again, because now the lie was out of the way, I mean, it's so simple, but when you're in it, people can't see it, and you don't think you're going to be in it until you are, until you're in this cliche place, and it's happening to you, and you're like, oh, this is the stuff I see in movies and read in magazines. It doesn't have, but yeah, all it takes is a little deception between two people, and the wall goes up, the wall goes up.
Mm.
And it's impossible to get over it. It's impossible to get through it until you break down the deception, until you annihilate it,
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, okay, now it's not in the way anymore. What have we got? What's here? What can we? And we tried very hard to sort of revive, But the good news is we found the warmth and the love again, and I'm grateful for that. I'm really grateful for that.
I mean, it really does sound like you have a second show here. A second. I mean, I'm just saying.
Aren't you sweet? Aren't you sweet? Thank you, Jeff. I must compliment your interviewing skills. You're a good listener, and you're yeah.
I greatly appreciate that. I'm always fine
You're
with
welcome.
compliments. So
you can. Okay, we're going to talk after you're done because I want to say something. But go ahead. Carry on.
So, why did you decide to shift from acting to real estate?
Okay, so that was never a decision that took place. Those are two separate decisions that didn't take place in the same moment in time. I decided to retire from acting when I reconnected. I think I mentioned this earlier with my younger brother's best friend, and we married. And I lived in Cincinnati briefly, and we figured out, that we just weren't compatible for the long run. And I jokingly say I played the Midwestern housewife for 2.5 years. And then I retired that role and I moved back to upstate New York. There I was in the middle of the country, Jeff. And I said, oh my God, do I go back to LA? Oh, good gravy. No. Or do I go home? And I just wanted to come home. And my older brother and his wife lived in Cazenovia, New York, this charming little village on a lake. Like 3,000 people live here, and it's so darn sweet. And we're just outside Syracuse. So we got all kinds of culture and good hospitals and universities around us. And we used to come here in the summer. We'd have family reunions here. So I bought a little house in the village, and wouldn't you know, the gentleman that I hired to rehabilitate the house because it needed some work, I interviewed 4 contractors, and the man I chose is the man I spent the next 17 years with.
Nice.
So I had retired from acting completely, wrote the show in Cincinnati, finished it, moved back to upstate New York, and now I'm involved with this man who builds things, and he's really talented. And I had every intention of going back to school, getting my master's in criminal justice, would you believe? I don't know what the hell I thought I was going to do with it at that point, but I took my GREs and I was going to go back to the University of Cincinnati and live there temporarily while I went to school and maintain this house in upstate New York. And he said, do you want to build a house and see how it goes? And I'm like, okay. So we built a house and it sold, lickety split. And so I got my license and I went into real estate, and it's been an amazing 17 years. I feel good about what I do. I like what I do. I never thought of myself as a salesperson. So I don't really sell, to be honest. I try to bring unrelated things to each other and make a magical, concoction, whether it's the seller and the house to the buyer, and the purchase or whatever it may be, that's the part of it that I love, is when people walk into a house. Like I walked into my house. I was a sad puppy coming out of that third marriage and moving to upstate New York. And I bought this house because I felt hope again in this house. I don't know what it was. I walked in and I just went, oh my God, I can figure out who's going to love me. What'll become of me? Will I ever have a family in these rooms? What am I going to do with the rest of my life in these rooms? And then I hired David, and boom, there I was. So I wish for every buyer to have that reaction to a house. I wish for them to feel something that you can't describe. It's just a connection, and it feels right and it fits. It's not just about dollars and cents. You know what I mean? It's not just about all these things that are sort of unchangeable, like bedrooms and baths and all that stuff. It's about, there's a certain chemistry between a buyer and a house that is really fabulous to witness.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. It's been almost exactly 2 years since I bought my first house with my wife, and I remember being a very special feeling, because for the very longest time I never thought of myself as someone who would ever be able to afford a house for various reasons I'm not going to go into, but I was very excited, and I kind of was wondering, because I remember experiences that I've had with real estate agents. Do you utilize some of your acting as a real estate agent? Because I remember dealing with some agents who were definitely got to, I assume, some level of performance involved with trying to sell things that might not have been the best sell, as it were.
Honestly, Jeff, I totally appreciate what you're saying. Would one's acting skills maybe apply, to the field of real estate? Once again, and I mentioned this early on in our time together, I am just dreadful at self-promotion. And even when the COVID struck, I wrote a little text and I got this app called Nano Teleprompter. And it's one of these fabulous apps that allows you to put your dialogue in your phone while you film yourself. And I came up with this fabulous, again, this is like March of last year, a year ago now. Good evening, this is Robin Curtis. And now more than ever, you need someone you can trust, especially in real estate. And I go on to talk about why you should hire me. I never filmed it. I bought all the equipment. Practiced, never filmed. So I couldn't sell or pretend something it wasn't to anybody. Ever, never, no. So the notion of taking a house that needs work and implying anything else other than this house needs work. Yeah. Oh my God, no, don't buy this house. Run the other way. No, I'm very honest. I'm very honest when it comes to either to a seller and what they need to do to get their house ready to sell, or to a buyer who's looking at a house to buy. I'm candid with either party about what it's going to take to make it right. I want everybody to feel good when they walk away from a transaction. That's my sort of real estate philosophy. I don't want to be, I'm honestly not interested in a transaction where somebody is the word hobbled the other party. Not interested. I want the buyer and seller to both walk away with their head up. In other words, a fair transaction, a totally fair transaction by all measurements. I did a film once. This is before Star Trek 3 came out. I worked on a film in Morocco, which never saw the light of day. Because there was all sorts of drama behind the scenes, and the producer and the director ran off with the film canisters, and somebody went to jail. I mean, it was interesting how it all went down. Yeah. So it was called Un filo bianco, un filo nero, a white thread, a black thread. And it was an interesting story about a young Jewish attorney who goes to Palestine to defend Palestinians. And there I am in Morocco. And why did I bring this up? There was a reason.
So you got time. Uh-oh.
What was I just talking about?
Real estate and fair transactions.
Oh, yeah. So there I am in Morocco in this like amazing place in Casablanca and Marrakesh, etc. And of course, when we had free time from the set, we would go into the inner city, what they call the Casbah, the old city, and you would shop. And I could not negotiate. I couldn't negotiate. And they would not have it. The store owners would not have it. You couldn't go in and say, please just give me a number, a fair price. I'm happy to pay you. So I couldn't buy anything unless I took somebody along with me who would negotiate for a leather coat or a little rug or a little woven bag. Yeah, can't do it. So, anyway.
Just remind me of something back many years ago before I was going to become a teacher. I'm a high school teacher now, but before I became a teacher, I was going to do primatology. And I went down to Costa Rica for a summer to do some class research. And I remember there was a statue that I liked at this Costa Rican retailer, okay? And I looked at it, and I said it was nice, and I walked away. And they started saying, well, okay, how about just this? I was like, well, I appreciate you giving me a price, but I'm not interested. I just thought it was nice looking. And honest to God, they went down. I can't remember what it ended up being for price, but they literally were following me around the store, just changing the number the further I walked. And eventually I bought the statue. I still have it. But I think it went down from like $60-something to like $25. And I was like, I wasn't trying to negotiate with you. I just didn't want it. I just thought it was nice.
Yes, exactly. Jeff, I have the same thin skin about it. I do. It's like, oh, no, don't go down. Good for you. Good for you. That you have it still too.
Well, I do have it. It's a beautiful. I guess it's supposed to be the Costa Rican vision of what death is supposed to look like. It's a combination of death and an old man, because he's an old guy with a long beard, but it has a sickle, and he looks kind of like a farmer / old man like death. And it's a beautiful statue. And funny thing, just a quick funny story, and we'll move on. This was a few weeks before 9/11. And I had the box coming from Costa Rica trying to cross into the United States with this box. I still remember to the day, the person who I was at the airport with, at the counter goes, is there anything in there that ticks or could explode? I was like, no. They're like, okay, you're fine. Keep walking. I was like, 3 weeks later, I guaranteed they would be opening up that box and taking a look at what was inside, But it was interesting. But anyways,
wow.
Anyway, back to you. So have you considered going back to acting, or is that something that you think about?
Would I go back to acting? So here's the scoop. Yes, I suppose I would if it's the right project. I have a full-time career. I am in real estate full-time. I hope to maybe retire in a couple of years. We'll see how much money I can sock away. I have a very fabulous human being in my life that's very dear to me. And this is a client, right? A real estate client who has since become a friend. And he writes scripts, and he has offered a part to me if he can get a script on its feet. And he's actually connected with people in Hollywood that are real. Like he's ambitious. Okay. He does all the stuff that I don't do. Yeah. He keeps going at it like a battering ram. So I would definitely work in anything that he had going on. But see, I was invited to that party. You know what I mean? If I'm invited to the party, sure, I'll do it. And I might do my show again. We'll see. I put it out to somebody recently, and we'll see if it ever, sees the light of day again. But I love doing the conventions. I love meeting fans, and I love putting out for them, connecting with them. And I mean, that's not really acting, but it is sort of, their public appearances. And I do enjoy that so much. So that's, I don't think there's going to be any big acting roles for me out there anymore, kiddo. I definitely have retired, and with those few exceptions that I just described.
Well, I certainly hope you end up at the Rhode Island Comic Con, because that's where I go to. I would love an autograph from you at some point. So Rhode Island Comic Con must be in your future at some point. Rhode Island Comic Con.
Oh, Rhode Island Comic.
That's where I live. So like I said.
Yeah, how nice.
Definitely go.
I've never even heard of your Comic-Con.
Rhode Island Comic-Con's been around, I think, for maybe 8 years. They're usually a relatively big show. I think we've actually had some pretty decent names. I think William Shatner's showing up a few times over the last 4 years. Yeah, like I said, if you go, I definitely want an autograph, so I'm going to go find it if you ever show up.
Thank you, sweetheart. Thank you. Well, how can we wrap up this evening?
Well, I just want to thank you very much for talking with me. And next time, if you do decide to do your second show, your A Good Girl Part 2, please come on to Sell It.
Okay, you're so sweet. I will. Oh, thank you, honey.
I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
And,
yeah, it's been a pleasure. You're really good at that.
Spaghetti! And we're back.
That's right. We are back. Back in the saddle again. Well, I hope you guys really, really enjoyed that as much as we did making it for you. And if you liked what you heard and you want to hear more, you got to go check out spoilerverse.com, because at spoilerverse.com we have a plethora, amazing directors and artists of all walks of life, and editors and writers, and oh my God, are you a lover of comic books like we are? Then there's so many amazing people from the comic book world over at spoilerverse.com, and I highly implore you to go there and check it out.
Yeah, and while you're there, you can check out all the other podcasts on our network, like Bridges and Geekdoms and Funny Book Forensics and Haphazard Adventures and Nerds from the Crypt and so many more.
Misery
We put out
Point Radio.
episodes all the time. Go check all of them out, and check out all of the reviews and previews and articles we have going up every single day for you, every day on spoilerverse.com for you to check out and to read and to love and to like and to comment. We have a store link. If you want to help support the site, you can do it two ways. One, go to our Patreon, which is patreon.com/spoilercountry, or go to our store link in the middle of the site there and get a t-shirt, a face mask, a hoodie, something, look fly as hell, and help support the site when you do that, because we get $1 or $2. And, maybe you want to talk to us. If you do, you can do it obviously on all the socials, but if you go to scpod.us/discord, you can join our public Discord server and come chat with us all day long.
I couldn't say it better myself, dude.
There you go.
You just mouthed out a ton of information at once, and really I hope you guys enjoy what you're hearing, because we're working our butts off to bring it to you.
We are.
I guess there's only one left thing. Yeah, I'm gonna go with it. There's only one left thing left to do.
What's that?
In an oceans of podcasts,
We are Cthulhu.
as Cthulhu compels you to
Spaghetti. Open the mind.
and read more.